How can you make sure your first hire is a great hire? Or more importantly, every subsequent hire being a slam dunk of adding someone new to your team who isn't going to be a bad experience, who isn't going to do things you don't want them to do, steal time from you, and ultimately not be a great employee for your business? We're going to talk about it for your business today on the show and give you some insights on one, how you can interview very well for your next hire, and more importantly, a very simple truth about hiring in general. All that's on the show today. If you're tuning in for the first time, my name's Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast. We bring you all the actionable, tangible things you need to know to be able to grow and scale your business. Before we dive into our conversation today, we have a word from the incredible businesses that sponsors the podcast. We'll be right back soon. When disaster strikes in your home, do you know who to count on? I'm talking about when water damage, fire damage, or mold becomes a problem in your house. You need someone that you can trust who's going to get your house back in working order. That's why I love recommending Best Option Restoration here in Northwest Arkansas. Best Option Restoration is the perfect choice for when you need that initial response for damage in your home. They're a national leader here in our Northwest Arkansas community, and they are restoration specialists that can give you the peace of mind you need when you're facing the unthinkable. Your home is somewhere special, which is why you need someone who sees the value in your home and wants to get you taken care of as quickly and efficiently as possible. Best Option Restoration is so committed to helping you with your home that they have an answer line that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, where you can talk to an actual person about getting a specialist out to your home and resolving whatever damages you're seeing in your house. So if you experienced fire damage, water damage, or discovered mold in your home, call Best Option Restoration today to restore your house back to the home you love. Call 479-458-8840 or click the link in the episode description to contact Best Option Restoration today. So, hiring someone can be a really exciting time for your business. If it's your first hire, it's often a sign of, oh my gosh, this thing's working. I'm making enough money that I can actually bring someone onto my team. And it can be a very, very energizing time for your business. It gives definitely a sense of forward progress in that things are actually pinging and working in your brand. For those of us who've hired many times, or myself personally, I've either hired myself or been involved in the hiring of a multitude of people, it can sometimes feel like rolling the dice a bit. It's like, is this person how they describe themselves? Is that actually who they are? Or more importantly, how do I just make sure that I hire someone who is going to do what they say they're going to do? And worst of all, isn't going to, I don't want to say like stab me in the back. That's a little intense for hiring someone, but isn't going to do things that I wouldn't want them to do, right? Like they're actually not where they say they're going to be. Worst case scenario, they lie or they steal from the company or what have you. We're going to talk about all of those situations today. Now, also, what we'll do in today's episode is I'm going to walk you through some of the worst hiring stories that I've heard over the years, which I've shared some of them on the podcast before, but I'm also going to talk about a very recent example. Someone who I was talking to, a customer of mine, was sharing about their latest hire, and I think this might surprise you a little bit. So why don't we start there? 1 second. I'm still getting over a cold a little bit, but let's start with my customer, a friend of mine, who was sharing a story about his latest hire. What happens is this person was bringing someone new onto their team, and this person gave him a phone call and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Are you guys hiring?" And my buddy, and I don't really know the details of the full conversation, but long story short, was like, "Yes, I'm willing to give you a job." And was so trusting with this person that this guy actually, or my customer, actually did a number of things on the front end. The person was strapped for cash, so he gave him his first paycheck in advance. He gave the 2 weeks pay up front. He bought him a truck and gave him a truck to drive around either for business development or different job sites or what have you. I don't know the full details of the position. And got him a uniform, all these things, did the whole shebang, did a lot of really great things for this person. Well, here's what ended up happening. This employee, and by the way, this is a norm across any company, any business that has service trucks. This is a norm where there is a GPS tracker on the truck. It's not, micromanaging. It's not creepy. It's not weird. It is absolutely the norm and is a standard across any company that's going to have service vehicles of any kind. Just because you want to know where your trucks are, and even over the years, there have been a number of instances where someone will take a truck, steal a truck, drive it across state lines, and you have to find out where that vehicle is. So the GPS is a very handy tool for that. So he had the GPS in his truck and gave it a few days and decided to check in and see, where has this employee been driving? Well, where the employee had been driving was the casino. So he had taken him to the casino. He had taken the truck to the casino, had spent all week at the casino. And I was talking to this customer of mine. I was like, man, so what did you do? And he's like, well, I thought I'd give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's got some good connections at the casino. Maybe he's working some deals. Let's see how this goes. And more importantly, let's give him enough rope to hang himself with if it turns out that he is taking advantage of me. So another few days go by, and sure enough, this person is continuing to go to the casino. And let's just be really clear, blow his own money, really blow his boss's money and waste his time. Obviously, when this person first came to my friend and said, hey, I need a job, realizing after the fact why this person is unemployed, I think it became very obvious. So here's what happened. My buddy calls him, says, hey, I don't think this is going to work out. The guy says, well, what's going on? He's like, well, I see on my GPS that you've been going to the casino. You've been doing this. You've not been honest. You've been taking advantage of me. So it's not going to work out. And this person responded with, I knew you were going to micromanage me. Totally playing the victim. Just a crazy story. I was flabbergasted. He was telling me the story in person and my jaw about hit the floor. I could not believe someone would be so entitled and just disgusting in terms of their behavior with my friend of mine who did an extremely generous thing, provided the truck, provided money up front, provided the uniform, extremely trusting. And even my friend was like, he's like, man, I'm not going to do that again. And I've seen people over the years where I actually had a customer, a client years ago who was incredibly micromanaging, incredibly untrusting with her employees. And as we started working through it and talking about it, I was like, so what's the deal with this? Came to find out that she had a partner, a co-founder in her previous business who basically quit and took all of those customers with him. And in her mind had sort of backstabbed her and double-crossed her. And I said, well, is that the reason you're so untrusting and micromanaging for your employees? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to let that happen again. And I was kind of like, well, how long are you going to make your current team members be punished for the pains of what you've experienced in the past? So I was trying to tell my friend this, something similar, in that he was like, I won't do that again. And I was like, and I wasn't going to say, you should always buy someone a truck. I think there's some wisdom that was gleaned there. He tried to give someone the benefit of the doubt and they proved him wrong. And now he's probably going to go about it a little bit differently in the future. But on the same token, I was like, hey, you know what? You did right by this person. You tried to do the right thing by this person. And that's something that's worth admiring. I know I admire it. And I was trying to say that to encourage him, let's not go from ditch to ditch, but also just, I was so impressed with his generosity that I think even though it didn't work out, it's worth recognizing the heart behind what he did. And this is just as an aside, by the way, y'all, there are things in life where you do the right thing and it does not work into your benefit. Understand that for a second. Doing the right thing isn't the right thing because it benefits you. It's the right thing because it's the right thing, even when it costs you. You make a mistake with a customer. And I think about when I was working at Chewy's, I messed up an order And the customer, the whole order got totally screwed up. And at the end of the night, the table had a great experience. And the customer said, I said, "Hey, sorry about the food. I really apologize." And he was like, filling out the check and doing the tip and all that stuff. And he goes, "Yeah, no problem. Was it your mistake or was it the kitchen's mistake?" It would have been in my benefit to say, "Oh man, these people in the kitchen, they don't know what they're doing." But instead I said, "You know what? It was my mistake. I screwed it up and I'm really sorry." That doesn't benefit me. It doesn't, it doesn't, honesty is not always rewarded. But I said that because it was the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. So you do the right thing even when it costs you, even when it doesn't work into your benefit. And in the same way, my friend, he did right by this new employee, even though it bit him in the rear down the road. But there's a bit to glean from this. There's a bit to talk about from this. And I'm really excited for today's episode because if you've been thinking about hiring or wanting to hire, or you're already hiring and you're trying to get better at hiring, you're going to find a lot of value in the how-tos and also just simple truths about people in general. So, is this guy never going to hire again? No, he's going to have to hire again. He will hire again just because of the scale of his business he needs to, or his business will demand that he continues to hire people. But I want to take you back probably about a couple of years ago now. I had another customer who was thinking about hiring his first employee. And we kind of went around and around on this topic of hiring, and it was taking a while for him to bring someone on. And finally I said, "Hey, so what's going on? Why does it feel like this is taking a while? Like you already know you need to hire. What's the holdup? What's the delay?" And he goes, "Honestly, man, I'm scared. I'm scared of hiring someone and it being a flop. I'm scared of hiring someone and them not being a great fit. And then I've wasted that money and time. Like I only want to hire someone if it's a for sure it's going to work thing." And you know what my advice to him was? "Buddy, it doesn't work that way." Because at the end of the day, we are working with people. We're dealing with people. And people can do a great job of showing you the side they want you to see and saying all the right things. But we are also deeply flawed and broken as human individuals. And sometimes those things are shown in full display when we bring someone onto our team. And this is a comment about like cynicism or, you can't trust anybody. I think you can bring people on who are rock star, incredible employees, but it's not 100% lock. At the end of the day, you are at the mercy of the discipline and work ethic and honesty and integrity. Ultimately, the values of the person you're bringing on. You're at the mercy of their values. And some people are really good at saying all the right things, but when you engage with their values, when you see their values, you realize, you know what? This person isn't a good fit for me. The nature of our hiring system, like understand this. If you're trying to do 5, 6, 7 interviews with someone, you have already lost the most qualified candidates for that position because the most qualified candidates are getting hired after the first interview or the second interview, maybe the third interview. Pretty much after the first or second interview, they're getting hired because they are so talented, they effuse expertise, and they're incredible for the position. So when you insist on a long hiring process because you're scared and you want to make sure it's the right fit and you want to ensure that this person is going to do what they say they're going to do, you are already limiting the talent pool for that position. You're setting yourself up to interview lower quality people because who are the people who are willing to go through 7, 8, 9 interviews? The desperate people, the people who can't get hired. It's nothing against those people. It's the fact of the matter. It's going to be less qualified people. I remember I applied for a job at a local business years ago before I ever got into consulting. So this would have been, I guess, 2013. So about 11 years ago, I applied for a job. And after about, I think I did the interview and then I got contacted a month later for another interview. So I did the second interview. Didn't hear anything back. And then I think after like another 3 or 4 weeks, I sent an email or maybe made a phone call. It had been about 2 months at this point. And I said, "Hey, yeah, what's the status of my interview?" And they said, "Oh, we're still working through candidates. It's gonna take a while." So I was like, "Okay, whatever." And I just assumed I didn't get the job. All that to say, I ended up getting into consulting. I got hired at Soderquist Leadership over in Siloam, and I got hired, I guess, in actually no, this wouldn't have been 11 years ago. This would have been let's see, I got hired there in 2017, I think. So this would have been 7 years ago. But I think I had applied in 2016. So I start working at Soderquist and I get this phone call. It had been like a year since my original interview. Actually, no, it had been about 9 months. Sorry, this is like pinball with Blake's memories today of like, well, wait, actually, it was this. I'm sorry. But I get this phone call and I remember it specifically that it had been 9 months because I get this phone call, or maybe it was an email that was like, "Hey, we'd like you to come do a final interview. You're in the final group of applicants, what have you." So I email back and I say, "Hey, sorry, I actually already picked up a position, but I'm curious, why did it take so long?" And I get this long response back that's like, "We are so incredibly proud of our hiring process. We have a 9 month hiring process so that we can really ensure we're bringing on the best qualified candidates, yada, yada, yada. So we apologize for the delay." Now, all things considered, this could have been someone trying to save face. This could have been someone who realized maybe they went through an applicant, or maybe I was in like the second, B tier, and the person they brought on didn't work out, and so it was like, go back to our short list. Who else did we have? Could have been any number of things, but taking it at face value of what was said to me, what was said was, "We're really proud of our 9 month hiring process. It's what really ensures us to have the best quality candidates for the position." And I remember reading that thinking, are you nuts? There is no way you're going to find an incredible candidate who is going to wait 9 months for a position. And this happens often where we stress and overemphasize the qualities we need in a hire, and it causes us to lose out on those really great potential candidates for our positions. But like I was saying, this is kind of the nature of hiring today, in that if you hire too quickly, you might not get a good sense of who they are and they might flop. And if you wait too long and you insist on too many touch points, chances are that person is going to move on to a different position. All this with the caveat that even when you do everything right, even when you approach hiring the right way, you still might have someone come into your business who is not a good long-term fit. They knocked out all the interviews. You thought it was perfect. You thought it was great. And then day one, you realize, wow, this isn't really a great fit for me. I saw a post on LinkedIn. This woman was posting a story of a major business that she quit. She aced the interviews. She got brought on. And day one of the business, she was said some very misogynistic things. She was said some very toxic things about workplace expectations, things that were different from how things were described in the interviews. Things like, hey, we have our crunch seasons where we're going to do 60 to 80-hour weeks. And she was like, "Well, I'm a mom. I don't want to do that. I don't see myself doing that." And then some of this stuff was pretty manipulative from her perspective of like, "Well, I mean, you're new here and you're not willing to put in the work." And this wasn't an entry level position. This was a mid to senior level position, someone who's already put in the time, so to speak, and was realizing this is way different from what I thought it was. So I'd say both ways. Sometimes you realize that the place that you thought was going to be the best place to work, you get there and you're like, "Ooh, this is not what I thought it was." And vice versa. Sometimes you bring someone on who they come on and you're like, "Wow, this is not a great hire." I interviewed someone years ago when I was working in Houston, Texas. We were interviewing someone to come into the school and be basically like the front desk person. She interviewed really well. She didn't really have the experience, but I thought, hey, let's give her a chance. And I was part of a committee of people who were hiring. And I said, let's give her a chance. Let's give her an opportunity. I think she could be a really great employee, whatever. She gets hired. About 2 or 3 months later, I walk into the office that she's working in. She's on her phone, she's texting or something or scrolling the internet. And I come up and I say, "Hey, how are you?" She doesn't look up from her phone. She's just scrolling. And I tried to like ask her a couple of questions because I was trying to meet with the assistant principal. She could not have been more disinterested. Like eyes did not come off the phone as I was talking to her. And it was very much Will Arnett from Arrested Development, where I'm watching this happen and I have like this, not crisis, but like this revelation in my mind of I've made a huge mistake. This lady doesn't even know how I went to bat for her. And here I am realizing that I gave this person the benefit of the doubt, and she is now showing herself to be lazy, um, disengaged, and, you know, totally indifferent to my presence in the room, which who the heck am I? I'm not expecting a red carpet, but I am hoping when I talk to someone, they take their eyes off their phone and we can at least have a brief moment of connection as I try to get my problem solved. And I hope I give people that same dignity and respect when they talk to me as well. So people will not always be what you thought they would be. Sometimes people show themselves, they show their true character. Let's talk about what you can be doing and what you should be doing in the hiring process to make sure that while it's not perfect, when you bring someone on, you have a pretty good guess as to what kind of employee they will be. The first thing I will say is I get this question a lot, or I wouldn't say too often, but I see it on a regular cadence, probably about once a month, of should I hire for character or skill? I've even had customers over the years. I had a customer years ago who was hiring a position in their business, and they had two options. They had someone who was totally green and new to the industry and someone who had been in the industry for a long time. One of them was a go-getter. And even though she was new to the industry, there were many qualities about her that seemed like she could do really well in this position. And the other person wasn't as extroverted, I would say, or energetic in the interview process, but had been in the industry for about 2 decades. So my client, we're talking about this, and he says, "Hey, which one would you hire?" Because I like this one's energy. I like their excitement being new to the industry, but they don't have any experience. So I would have to teach them and train them. This other person would know everything from top to bottom, but I just felt like she's a little bit bored of the industry. She's not as excited as I would have preferred. And I just don't know what kind of employee she would be. So what would you do? And I'd even ask you as a listener, which one would you hire? Now, one of the things that I like to rip on is these inspirational, motivational things that come up on LinkedIn and different social media platforms. So you probably already know the answer because many of us have seen things like this. And I apologize for the pauses. Sometimes I have this cold I'm getting over, so I'm having to pause and cough a couple times. But anyway, we've all seen these social media, things about it's very inspirational, and it's, you hire the person who's excited and you can teach them the rest. And one of the things I talk about on social media is the lack of nuance on social media. We've lost our insight around nuance. There's a lot of popular mottos and phrases and expressions that people rally behind without recognizing how the nuance of it may not apply to your business, or it may make it show up differently in your business. So some examples of this might be, you have to niche down. Well, does that mean if you don't niche down, you can't have a successful business? You might have a business that naturally involves a wide breadth of customers across a number of industries, and you've never felt the financial need to niche down. Now, are there merits to niching down? Absolutely. But is it a silver bullet for every business? No. There's nuance in business, and when we ignore these things and blindly follow social media, we wonder why the cookie cutter approach can't just be picked up and dropped on our brand. We wonder why it's not working, even though we're following what the popular influencers are saying. So with that, with hiring, would you hire someone who doesn't have the skill set, but they're eager, or the person who's a bit bored of the industry, but they have deep experience. And what I would say is, or actually, the question I asked my customer was I said, okay, let's talk about this. Do you have the time to actually train this person? And he's like, yeah, I'd be willing to train her. And I said, well, I didn't say if you'd be willing to train her. I said, why are you bringing this person into your brand today? He said, I don't have the time or the capacity to do these things anymore. I'm way over capacity. I need someone who can come in and just do these things for me. And I said, okay, these things you need done, how urgent are they? And he basically was like, I needed to hire someone for this a couple of weeks ago. Like it's bad. And I said, okay, how long do you think it would take for this person you're bringing in to learn how to do these things? And he was like, maybe a few weeks. And I said, okay, a few weeks of you training her every day? Yeah, probably that. Okay. So let's say you're spending a couple hours every day training this person, and it takes a few weeks to get her brought up to speed. How much longer before you think she's going to be able to do it on her own without needing to ask you or get advice from you or direction or, be led by you? How much time do you think that would take? And he said, maybe a few months. And I said, I don't know. I'd say maybe 6 months to a year, probably a year in an average situation, because you're coming into an industry you don't know. And this is an employee. This isn't someone starting a business. I think someone who starts a business is the person who's going to be on YouTube at 11 o'clock at night, willing to learn and be a self-starter and all these things. Most people, as soon as that clock hits 5 o'clock, they're out. They're done. So let's say maybe 6 months to a year. Do you think you have the time to wait a year before this person starts to replace the effort that you're doing, before this person starts to do the things you originally hired them to do? Is 1 year, is that a good timeline for you? And he was like, well, no, this is urgent. I can't. I said, okay. So let's talk about the other person then. How much value would there be in someone who's not as eager or energetic, but who you can know on day one, whatever you ask them to do, they're going to do it immediately? He said, that sounds great. That sounds awesome. So I said, okay, so are you really going to say no to this person because you like the energy of the person who's green? Like, let's unpack that a little bit. Now, I think where we landed was somewhere in the middle. I think sometimes we look at our sea of applicants and we think that we're choosing between one or the other when really we just don't have the right applicants who are applying. And sometimes that means going back to the hiring process and figuring out, like, why didn't I attract the right people to this business? Was it pay? Was it not a good job description? Was I calling it this position, but it's actually known as something else? A good example of this might be, you're hiring for like an HR director, but you describe them as a recruiter. You're not looking for a recruiter. You're looking for someone to manage the HR function of your business. But even ourselves, when we're self-starters for our business, we don't always know all the vernacular, the terminology, what have you. And so we think we're hiring for this position when really it might be something totally different. In fact, I find myself in these conversations with my customers where they say, hey, I need to hire someone. I need someone who can do X, Y, and Z. And I say, hey, it sounds like you're hiring this kind of position. And it could be even something as simple as, hey, it sounds like you're hiring a sales position. It doesn't sound like you really need someone to do all these other things. It sounds like you need a salesperson to go out and sell, and then you can outsource or look for other opportunities to get these other things taken care of. So look at your applicants and ask yourself, why am I not getting the right person applying for the seat that I want to fill? And I will say, by the way, a lot of times it is pay. A lot of times you're getting bad applicants because you're putting the the pay out as too low. In this conversation, I've had a bit of pushback over the years of someone who says, well, I don't want to just hire someone who's motivated by money. I don't want to just hire someone who's looking to get paid. And I have to say this carefully but kindly. That is the means to people providing for themselves and making a way for themselves and ensuring that they are taken care of. So when you say, I don't want to hire someone because of, I don't want to hire someone, I don't want to hire someone because they're motivated by money. I mean, that's, you're putting a round peg in a square hole. Okay. I think what you mean is you don't want to hire someone who's greedy, which is totally fine. But someone's not going to come work for you because they want to do it out of the kindness of their heart. And I'll even be honest, they're probably even not that inspired by your brand. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of us aren't doing very sexy things with our business. It just is what it is, right? So let's move on now to the kinds of questions, how do you really glean the values that someone has? How do you really glean, is this person who they say they are? So let's say you get someone in an interview and you're having a conversation with them. First of all, you've at least put the right things on the job description that match up with their resume. It's a very obnoxious habit, by the way, of people who say, "Oh, I haven't even read the resume yet," or "Tell me about yourself," or what have you. You need to have some insight as to who this person is when they're coming to sit down with you, and if they even are the right fit for you. I hired for a social media position. Actually, it was a videographer position for my business, not videographer, an editor for my business. And in this, I had so many applicants. I had something like 200 applicants for this position. Well, of the ones that actually were a good fit for what I was looking for, there were maybe 10. I think I actually reached out to 10 of those 200 and said, "Hey, let's schedule an interview." In the interview that I actually had, I think I had maybe 6 or 7 interviews that came from this. The way I decided that was that they actually had a portfolio of the work that I was looking for to ensure that they were a right fit for the business. I had any number of inspirational, motivational, not pleading, but just like, I know I'd be a great fit for this position, yada, 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 yada. At the end of the day, I just wanted to see who had actually done the job, done the work, and make sure that they were the right fit for the business. Okay. So make sure that the skill set's already there from the get-go and you're already off on the right step. But when you sit down with them, your job isn't to go through the resume with them. And I think this is a problem that people have. You're not sitting, okay, tell me about this job. Okay, great, cool. Oh, you did that. Like all of that stuff's already there. And if something's ambiguous, you can ask them about it, or you can ask a couple of questions to confirm that they do what you think they're going to do. But for the most part, you should already have at least a baseline sense of their expertise when they sit down for you. So then the purpose of the interview, beyond just getting more clarity on those details, is to get a feel for their value system. And I don't mean this in a weird way or like a creepy way. You're not trying to get their life story. You're not asking them like, "Hey, when was the first time you felt shame?" Like you're not a psychiatrist, but you do want to get a sense of what they care about, what's important to them, and more importantly, if those values line up with your values. And I'm going to give a couple of examples of this. First of all, though, the way you glean this kind of information is asking really good questions. And by the way, the kinds of questions you ask are dictated by the values you care about in your business. A lot of business owners don't know the values they care about. A lot of business owners don't know, like, what is my value system? What are the values of our brand? They don't know where to even start with that. And so then they're lost and confused in the interview, wondering why someone didn't feel like a good fit when really they weren't aligned with the values that they themselves didn't even realize they had. So all this to say, you sit down with the person and you ask them to tell you stories. You want a story-based interview. And the way you phrase that, let's say that one of your values, and for just speed of the podcast, let's not look for like a really, clever buzzword, but let's just kind of call it what it is. Let's say one of the values of your business would be one of the things I talked about earlier, doing the right thing, even when it costs you, doing right by the customer, even if you might lose the customer in that process. So what you would say to the new hire is you'd say, "Hey, tell me about a time that you made a decision that was in the best interest of the customer, even when it wasn't in your best interest." And then lean back and stop and let them tell their story. Let them share about their times. And maybe it's on a customer facing position. So you might say, hey, tell me about a time that you made a decision that was, you knew it was best for the business, but it wasn't convenient for you. And I try not to make these things like too good versus evil. So I phrase it in that way of, excuse me, I phrase it in that way of just tell me about a time that it wasn't convenient for you. I'm not going to say, tell me about a time that you did the right thing for the business, even though you wanted to be selfish. Or tell me about a time that you were sacrificial for the brand at your own expense. Like these, like really over the top words, like virtuous words. I try to avoid asking those kinds of questions because I don't want someone to feel like I'm getting like a black and white look at their soul where they're panicked and they're like, oh God, oh man, I didn't steal. I didn't murder anyone. I'm a good person. Really. I don't want someone to even process that kind of stuff. So I'll say, hey, tell me about a time you made a decision, you made a choice between something that was best for the brand, even though it was inconvenient for you. And then I sit back and I listen. I listen to their story. I try to glean what I can from it. Someone might say, their answer might be, yeah, I made a mistake in doing something and I had to stay late. Okay, that's a quality I like in someone. Or they might say, I've just never really, I've never really had that decision. And that doesn't mean that, they're, immediately I'm done with this interview. That's a data point of, okay, I'm going to put that aside and I'm going to look for the next data point. And what you're doing in the interview is you're trying to collect enough of these data points to get the best sense you can of this person. Their value system, do they care about the same things you care about? And it doesn't always have to be, these admirable traits. I had a customer years ago who what he sold were pens where they had a button on them and they would, specifically in this one, it was a Donald Trump, like you'd press the pen and it would be a quote from Donald Trump, a vocal quote where he'd say like, you are the best ever. I can't do Donald Trump. Otherwise I'll save you all that impression. But it was actual quotes from Donald Trump in interviews or what have you, where he had taken the voice, put it on the pen, and you press a button and it says it, which in retrospect now, I don't even know if you're allowed to do this kind of thing. Well, one of his values in his business was humor. And it was, if I'm going to hire someone, they have to appreciate humor. We're not doing anything political. We're not saying what side's better. All I want to do is make someone laugh. So what you might do is in an interview, you might say, hey, when's the time that you really made someone laugh? Or what was the situation that happened? Or what's something that, what do you like about laughter? Or when's the time that you tried to make a heavy situation a little bit brighter? Or you had a friend who was going through something hard and you were thinking about how can I make them feel a little bit better? Tell me about a time you did that. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get data points around this person's appreciation for humor and how do they use it in their life? And is it something they care about? Because if someone says, oh, well, I brought over ice cream and we watched a really sappy movie and there's never a mention of humor at all, and every story they tell is absent of humor, you might say, you know what, this seems like a great person, but I don't know if they have the same perspective on the brand of what I'm looking for. Now, granted, I think the hard thing in business is sometimes you think you need one personality or a certain value system, and then you realize it's actually a blind spot. You really need these other areas taken care of. This only comes through the pain of realizing you don't have those things. And it's like, maybe we need a little bit more of a serious, stoic person on the team, because when everyone's here and they appreciate humor, we play a lot of pranks, we tell a lot of jokes, and no work gets done. I mean, it could be anything, right? So all I have to say, you're asking these questions to get a better sense of who this person is, and also lastly, what drives them. Why are you wanting to work here? And I don't even like asking that question because I don't want someone to say, oh, I just love good advice. I'm so inspired, or I really want to help you. I don't want people to stroke my ego. It's more of, why do you want this kind of position? Like, what do you like about this kind of position? What excites you about it? And then get hopefully an honest answer on, yeah, okay, I see where they're going with this. But and again, sometimes this stuff it's not about good or bad. It's just, yeah, that's a good fit. Or you know what, maybe this person isn't a good fit. If you're hiring a sales position where someone's going to have to travel all over the state or what have you, and you say, what drives you? And they say, you know what, I really am trying to be home with my family every day. That's really important to me. It's priority number one that I am, 5 o'clock, I'm off work, and 5:30, I'm walking in my door. That's a very admirable trait. But the nature of the job might mean nights or weekends away from the family. Now, in the interview, I probably wouldn't say, okay, I probably wouldn't think you're out, but I'd probably ask, well, hey, this position has a lot of time away from home. It sounds like that's not a great fit for you. What do you think? And then sometimes you have to help people realize, yeah, you know what, this really isn't a good fit for me. And that's okay. All that to say, I'd be remiss if I didn't share a few of the worst stories of hiring that I've heard across the years. And people have a couple of these stories, people have very boldly and proudly shared these stories on their social medias for how they approach hiring. And I can't tell you how bad some of these are, but I'll give you a few of them. One of them is called the dish trick. And again, disclaimer, caveat, these are the worst ways you can hire someone. So one of them is called the dish trick. Interviewee comes in, you offer them a cup of coffee or a glass of water or what have you. And if they say no, you insist. You say, no, let me get you a glass of water just in case. You walk them to the break room. You walk them through the office to the break room. You get them the glass of water, a cup of coffee. You take them back to the interview room. You sit down. You have the interview. And then at the end, this is how the person described this hiring technique, if you can even call it that. If the interviewee offers to take their cup of coffee back to the break room and wash it out, this is a great employee. You should hire them because it shows that they are a self-starter and a team player. And as the person described this story, he said, if the interviewee doesn't say anything about the coffee cup, they just leave it on the table, no matter how good the interview went, this is an instant no hire because it shows that they are not thinking about anyone but themselves and they ultimately would not be a good fit for the business. This is so stupid. This is incredibly stupid. Someone you hire might be nervous. What a shocker of a thought. They might be nervous. They might feel it is presumptuous. How do you say that word? Presumptuous. Man, words are hard. They might think it's presumptuous to just take their coffee to the break room. They might feel it's invasive. They might feel it's more polite not to say anything at all. Or very simply, they are so nervous about the interview, they didn't even think about it. And that's human nature. The thing that kills me about this is no matter how good the interview went, I will not hire them if they don't offer to wash out the coffee cup. And my answer to that is, wow, are you looking for someone to wash your dishes? Or are you looking for someone to fill this position? And then another one I'll give you. This person told the story of they bring the candidate into the interview room and they say, hey, I'll be right back. They close the door, they leave them in there. And in the interview room is a laundry basket of laundry that's just come out of the dryer. Now, mechanically thinking about this story, I'm like, so this person took they did their dryer of clothes. They put it in a basket, they put it in their car, they drove it to work, and they set it up on the interview desk. I'm just thinking like all the silly things this person went through. Anyway, so they leave them in there with a basket of laundry fresh out of the dryer, and they leave for about 10 minutes, which, by the way, incredibly disrespectful of your candidate's time. Incredibly disrespectful. I am of firm belief, if you ask someone to interview with you at 9 o'clock, you should be there at 9 o'clock, if not a few minutes early. Give each other mutual dignity and respect, right? Anyway, after 10 minutes, you pop in. Hey, sorry for the delay. Let's get our interview started. Well, if the candidate on their own accord has gotten up and folded the laundry, this says all these amazing character qualities about who they are. Again, self-starter, team player, all these things. But if they've pushed the basket aside or they have ignored it, instant no hire, no matter what. Because, and I think actually the social media post, the actual phrasing was, I don't hire them because it shows me they're not willing to get their hands dirty. What a wild thing to say. How often on this job does this person need to be folding laundry? I mean, seriously. And if I'm the person interviewing, I would be thinking, what kind of workplace is this? Like maybe this was high on my list, and now I'm thinking, there's no way. These people are weird. Why is there a basket of laundry on the table? What's going on here? An incredibly stupid hiring technique that ultimately wastes yours and the candidate's time. And then the third one I'll share, it's a very quick one, equally stupid as the other two. This was the piece of paper test. You put a piece of paper or trash on the ground on their way out from where the candidate will be walking when they leave. Interview ends, you offer to show them out, you walk out with them, and I guess you've put this in clear path, right? If the candidate stops and picks up the trash and throws it away, again, self-starter, great hire, right? But if they walk past the trash, it's beneath them. They're too good for it. So they're not a good hire for the business. Come on, y'all. Come on. The person may not even seen the trash, but second of all, if I'm stepping over, I'm thinking, clean your office. What is this place? Like, really? I'm thinking worse things about you than you are about me. I'm thinking, why did I even come interview here? They've got trash on the floor. Like, this kind of performative, silly, stupid stuff is not good for figuring out if someone is the right candidate for your business. Let's be better interviewers. Let's ask good questions rather than let's read through the resume together. Let's read through the things you've already put here. And then these silly little tricks and things that, again, they waste your time and they waste the candidate's time. And it doesn't get you any closer to having a qualified person in your business. Hey, that's today's episode. If you have any questions about hiring, you can always reach out to me, Blake at goodadvicecoaching.com. I have a sea of good advice on this topic. I've been dealing with management and leadership for a long time, and I'd love to help see you win. All that to say, if you enjoyed this episode and you're a first-time listener, what are you waiting on? Click that subscribe or follow button so you keep getting good advice wherever you are. For those of you who've listened to the podcast long-term, maybe you're a Patreon supporter, or maybe you're a business who advertises on the podcast, thank you for your support of the show. I so appreciate it. That's today's good advice. We'll see you later.